If you're the kind of person who sees something wrong in the world and immediately starts thinking about how to fix it, if you care about policy, systems, and solutions, then original advocacy might be the right event for you. So, in this video, let's explore what original advocacy is. It's also called OA. Let's see how it works and why it might be a good fit for you. At its core, original advocacy is a 10-minute memorized speech event that you write and research, where your job is to identify a real world problem, usually one that's overlooked or misunderstood, and then propose a specific US government, federal government solution that we could possibly enact to fix it. And so you can already see, before I even explain anything else on this diagram here, how original advocacy is different than other speech events. It's not about mindset shifts or abstract concepts. It's not about getting a current event question and answering it on the spot. It's about policy, the systems that govern us, and how we can make those systems better. So your goal is to uncover a serious harm that affects people's lives, show us how current laws or agencies are failing, and make the case for why the government should take a step back or should step in and fix it. So what are the things that really great original advocacies do? Well, let's start off with what they are not, because oftentimes I see students come in wanting to do original advocacy because they want to talk about some big political issue that they feel really motivated about. And while that's great, that oftentimes doesn't translate into a good original advocacy if that political issue is something that's just a really well-known hot button issue. Standing up and talking about gun control or healthcare reform, or immigration, these big hot button issues that politicians are discussing all of the time, is not going to be particularly effective because your audience is already going to have preformed opinions and judgments about those topics. They're already going to feel that they know a lot about those topics. So if a student stands up to talk about it, they're not going to feel that they have much new stuff to learn. And so they're going to start to tune out. So instead, what you want to do in original advocacy is make sure that the problem that you are addressing is actually rooted in US federal government policy failure, right? It needs to be a problem that doesn't just exist in the world. You can imagine some more identity-based problems that perhaps original oratory or informative speaking would talk about that might discuss something like racism. And if you're addressing mindsets, that's not quite going to be rooted in a government policy failure. It's going to be very hard to change people's mindsets just through a government policy. But of course, if you were to find a way in which there's institutionalized forms of racism, for instance, a state champion from a couple of years ago had a really interesting topic about how the formula to determine, or the algorithm to determine whether or not somebody can get a kidney for a kidney transplant has a criteria in it that is based on 18th or 19th century pseudoscience that is explicitly racist. So it's a policy that is cooked into the very fabric of how people are determined in terms of their eligibility for kidney transplants that is explicitly denying African Americans in America their right to get kidneys. That type of institutionalized racism is clearly linked to policy choices and would thus be a very interesting speech for original advocacy. But just saying, hey, we need to stereotype people less would obviously not be a very good instance of a government policy failure. In addition, you need to make sure that you're exposing serious impacts or societal harms. The best topics, like I said, aren't ones that everybody has already argued about, but you need to make sure that these topics are ones that affect a wide swath of people in society or disproportionately affect a marginalized group in society in a way that would make us feel a sense of indignation. In addition, you want to make sure that your topic isn't something that's well known. You want to make sure it's unexpected. You want to make sure it's surprising. The best original advocacy speeches typically find that unexpected angle, problems that are urgent but under-discussed. You can think of it, if you've ever seen a really good late night host, like John Oliver would oftentimes have segments like this, where he would expose some sort of problem that not a lot of people know about that is rooted in policy failures, and all of a sudden that would be really interesting. And so your job is to hook the audience in with a problem that's very urgent, that's affecting a broad swath of people, but not necessarily something that everybody knows about. And then you're obviously going to propose a concrete and plausible policy solution. And then here's one of the most important ingredients that's been coming up more and more in recent years. This used to not really be a part of original advocacy, but we find that the students that do that are experiencing a ton of success, is personal connection. So some of our most successful speeches have come from students who care deeply about their topic. They've lived it. So one Bellarmine student in 2025 talked about the crisis of doctor overwork and its devastating impact on healthcare outcomes. His parents are both physicians, and he spoke candidly about how the exhaustion they faced affected his family, their well being, and even patient care. And that authenticity made the speech really memorable. Another Bellarmine student, who was a state finalist in 2025, spoke about how the lack of early bilingual education in the US. And how he had attended a bilingual school growing up. He became fluent in Spanish. He explained how that shaped his worldview, his educational opportunities, and his ability to connect with others. And his argument was that the US needs federal reforms to support second language acquisition early, not just in high school. Now, that one was a really unique type of speech because its impacts weren't necessarily the normal type of original advocacy impacts where people's lives are being actively ruined, but it was a really unique topic that had such a strong personal connection and just had such smart arguments about all of the benefits that occur from a bilingual education that it ended up working. So these speeches don't just work because they're well researched, but they were personal, specific, unexpected, and ultimately pointed us towards a very compelling US federal government policy solution. So, who is OA good for? I think OA is good if you love learning how systems work and break, and especially systems that are linked to these categories down here, so government, law, and public policy, and especially if you enjoy structured arguments. I think original advocacy as well as extemporaneous speaking are the two most structured of the speech events. They have a very clear structure. In original advocacy, you're going to outline a problem, go into its roots cause, show its effects, and then ultimately propose a solution. Pretty straightforward. In extemp, you have one answer and three subpoints. So if you're the type of person that really enjoys that type of structure, original advocacy might be a good event for you. One important note about original advocacy, though. All of the other speech events that you'll be introduced to in this class, OO, Info, Extemp, all of those are national events, which means that you could qualify to nationals and compete at NSDA nationals in June at the end of the year. Original advocacy is not. It's at all of our league tournaments. It'll be at our novice tournaments. You can qualify to state. You can go and be a state champion in it. But unfortunately, it does not have that national piece. So if you're somebody that really wants to compete on that national stage, that's something to keep in mind. Of course, there are plenty of students who compete in original advocacy and also do other events like debate events where they'll be able to compete on a national stage. But it's still something that I want to flag before you get too deep into the event if that's a big deal for you. But hopefully all of this makes sense and gives you a nice introduction to original advocacy. Excited to see what you all produce.